Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, this is Sherry at the Payne Family Farm. And I wanted to pick up where we left off yesterday, and we are going to get there. But last night when I was going over the videos and editing and kind of adding descriptions and everything that I did before I posted them, I got to thinking that I missed a couple of things. Now, there are two very important items, especially for people like myself who've never done this before. This is, and it's not like I wasn't involved. Growing up, trust me, we were all involved in the canning as far as the harvesting, the washing, the snapping beans, the shelling of peas. I could go on, the shucking of corn. Yes, we were all manual labor. So the only thing we didn't do was the canning. Now, the majority of my family, we water bath can. My dad does pressure can, and he also freezes. And we'll be doing all of that. Trust me, when we get to that corn that is about ready to be pulled that we were talking about yesterday, definitely we will be freezing some of that. And I found a recipe for creamed corn. So I'm going to adjust that recipe just a little bit, tweak it, and do my Aunt Maggie's fried corn. And we are going to can that. So that being said, the two things that I missed. Now, yesterday I mentioned who inspired me to do this, and that was Becky at Acre Homestead. One of the things that she suggested for novelty people such as me and myself, and being this is the first time I've done this myself, was this book, and this is the book, the Ball Bible. Now, this book, I got this in January. I got it from my sister for Christmas, and I have literally read this book cover to cover. So if you've never done this before, I highly recommend this book. And it's available on Amazon. I will share the link in the description of the video. So if you don't have one, you grab that. There's also the Ball Blue book. It's pretty much the same information. It's just for novelty people such as myself, my family, that have never done the canning process ourselves. Now, there are generally speaking, two processes of canning. You can pressure can, which we will be doing, and that is done with a pressure canner. And then you can also water bath can, and that is what we're going to be doing to the applesauce. Now, I've got so many things rolling around in my head. I'm trying to get them all in order. So we did get that done. The apples, or we call it Zapples. I did put those in a container last night. Once they cooled and got them put in the fridge, I have not pureed them. We are going to do that this afternoon. And but there's something else that Becky recommended, and I can't tell you how amazing this has been. I have probably watched a good 50 plus videos just in the last week, maybe 10 days, of different ways of canning. And I learned today there is a third way of canning that's called rebel canning. Now, the majority of the canning we know is USDA. In other words, the USDA in this book has instructed on how to can according to USDA standards. So that's the majority of the canning, if you were to use Ball book, that they have printed in that book. But there is another method of canning, and it is an Amish way of canning. And, thinking back, how would our grandparents or great-grandparents, who we know all grew and raised what they ate, how would they have kept that meat or kept all those vegetables without a pressure cooker? Because pressure cookers haven't been around that long. Pressure canners. So This method is what the Amish have been using for generations, 7 to 10 generations. This is how they have canned. Now, I'm going to be doing some of the produce that we're pulling out of the garden. I am going to be using the Amish method of canning for some of those, just to show you what that's like. It's basically, they water bath can everything. And when I say everything, I mean 100% everything. They do not have electricity. So keep that in mind. You can't use a pressure cooker or a pressure canner unless you have an outlet to plug that in. They water bath can chicken, beef, veal, deer, all of it, 100%. USDA does not recommend water bath canning meat, but we're going to try that. So I'm going to today show you the second thing Becky shared. And I can't tell you with the videos that I've watched how important this is. She suggested you start with a book. Start with an empty journal. This is just a cheap journal I bought at Dollar Tree for $1.25. So I didn't really put a lot of money into this, but this has been, I think I probably had this with me for the last week every single day. Whenever we're watching what we're watching, I am writing stuff down. And when it comes to some of the videos, actually what we did yesterday was based on one of the videos that I watched, and it's on page 4. So I literally wrote down every word that woman said, Lord love her. And that was the 1870s homestead, that link that I shared in one of my videos. So it's her recipe that we made our applesauce. Well, in the process of that, I came across another video, and I made a decision last night. So another video I came across was another homestead, and she is the one that introduced me to all of the things you can do with zucchini. You can pickle it. You can pickle it exactly the way you pickle dill pickles, cucumbers. I mean, we're going to be pickling zucchini slices, chips, and zucchini spears. We're going to kosher pickle them, and then I'm going to make a batch of bread and butter pickles out of zucchini. And now my whole family, they absolutely love pickles. Everybody does. My husband prefers the bread and butter pickles, so we'll be doing some of those, cucumber and zucchini, and also okra. I have okra that I plan to pickle. That's if my dad doesn't pick all of them and take them to my mama. So we do have a couple, and that's from a different video. So everything that I've done up to this point, and that we are going to do today, they all came from specific YouTubers and their channels and what they've done and how they've learned things. So what I've done in watching their videos is written everything down. So I'm going to turn it around. You can see, close my journal. So here is what we did. Now, the bottom one, I told you guys yesterday that I had actually made applesauce the day before. That is this one down here. That is pureed, already flavored, ready to be canned applesauce. Now, this top one, this is what came out of the crock pot last night. So when I shared my little 2-minute short last night video of what the zucchini and the apples and everything looked like, I let it cool down all on its own, and then I just went ahead, put it into a container, and I put it in the fridge. So these two things had been in the refrigerator. They've been sitting out for about, I want to say 30 minutes. I want to kind of let them get to not quite room temperature, but not as cold as they were in the fridge, because we are going to put this and cook this in the crock pot pureed. So now this applesauce down here on the bottom. This applesauce I cooked in a Dutch oven, so on my stove. So I just put this in a Dutch oven on my stove, added the ingredients that Rachel shared on 1870s, and I made my applesauce. So this is actually ready to be canned. Now this one we haven't pureed yet. We are going to puree this, but we are also, instead of putting it into the Dutch oven, we are going to slow cook this in the crock pot, because what I'm making out of this one is Zapple Butter. And Zapple Butter is a little bit like applesauce, except that it's much thicker, it's spreadable, and it has 2 more ingredients added to it than the applesauce does. So our Zapple Butter is kind of like a spicy cake or a spicy spread like you would do with peaches. There's a spice recipe you would add, you know, your nutmeg and your allspice, cloves. You would add all of that to this, and ginger, and that would make your spicy butter. So we're going to make some Zapple Butter out of this, but we're going to puree it in the crock pot. So I'm going to get my stuff ready, but I want to show y'all something that I just learned. I'm one of those people, and the reason that we're going to be putting this in the crock pot is because I prefer to work smarter, not harder. So if I can find a method of doing something that will make my life easier. So as you can see, I've already got my crock pot. It's on high. It's been on high for quite a while. I've taken the lid off because I don't want to cook that. I poured about a half a cup of apple juice in there just to have liquid. I don't like preheating my crock without something being in the bottom. And of course, you know, the apple juice, we're going to be adding a little bit of that to this anyway. So that is just perfect. So I've got this going. It's already ready to go. We'll be adding this in a few minutes. But I learned something today. I was Googling different methods of water bath canning. Now, I don't have a water bath canner yet. I ordered one and got a message today from Amazon that it won't be here until July. Well, I need a water bath can like, you know, yesterday. So I just kind of Googled, can I do this in a turkey oven, a roaster oven? And yes, ma'am, you sure can. Because we can get that puppy up to 450 degrees. And it only needs 200 and something to come to a rolling boil. So I'll share the link with y'all later in this video on how to water bath can in a turkey roaster oven. And I can't begin to tell you guys how excited I am about this, because this was my husband's toy and it's now become mine. So I'm claiming it back. However, today I'm thrilled because today I got my pressure canner. I am so excited. This showed up today. It's a 23 quart. Now my dad offered me his. He brought his over to my house and he was all ready for me to get started on canning and get everything going. But when I took it out of the box, there were no instructions. So I had no idea, being a novice, how to do this with no instructions. And honestly, trying to find instructions online for a 10-year-old pressure canner is not nearly impossible. I just wasn't, let's just say I didn't have enough ink to print that book. So I just thought it'd be best if I bought my own and I read that book and figure out what I want to can in there, what I can do in there, and what I will be doing in my turkey roaster oven, which is now my official water bath canner. So we're going to get started here in just a few minutes, and I'm so excited. So let me get this situated and get a couple things moved over, and I'll be coming right back to you. So stay tuned. Now, Hi. Hey, let's get started on making our apple butter. Now, the recipe that I'm using is a recipe that I found online on YouTube, and I'm going to share that in the link, as I said previously. I've got it written down in my journal. So I wrote down every step that she did. So that's what we did yesterday. We took roughly 5 cups of zucchini and 3 apples, and we put them in our slow cooker and got them all ready to go. But we were making applesauce. However, today we're going to make apple butter. Apple butter is thicker, and it's more sugar to help with that thickening, and it has a couple more ingredients than you would normally put in your applesauce. However, both applesauce and apple butter, they have to be pureed. So I have my trusty hand mixer. We're going to do it right in the crock pot. And I think this, honestly, my daughter is helping me today. Shout out to Laurel. So, yeah. I think I've had this as long as she's been alive.
Longer.
This has been around a long time. And I have gotten a lot of use out of it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pour our zucchini and our apples and everything back. Whoops, missed one. Come on, bub. There you go. We don't want to... We're going to pour them right back into the crock. Now, as you saw earlier, I had some, I had put a little bit, about roughly half a cup of apple cider in there. And so what we're going to do is I've got a 1 cup measure and measuring spoons. And we're going to add some sugar to this. And we're going to add both brown sugar, and it calls for white sugar. However, I'm going to use some raw sugar instead of the white sugar. I've found that I like the consistency of this better than the other white sugars. It has a much richer flavor, and it takes less of this to sweeten. For some reason in my head, I'm not using as much of this to sweeten things as I have to use of the white sugar. So that is a good help too. So then we have a couple of spices that we're going to add. But first, Laurel, come right over here. We're going to puree all of this right inside my crock pot. So I'm going to start that up. Now, I did this the other night in the Dutch oven. I covered myself and my entire stove and part of the counter in applesauce. And trust me, that is a mess you do not want to have to keep clean up. So the deeper your pan, the deeper your pot, the easier it is to puree. So we are just, and it doesn't actually have to be 100% liquid. For apple butter, you can leave a little bit of chunky in there if you want to. I know when my dad loves peach butter, and we're going to be getting some peaches in the next week. So I know when I start making my peach butter, he wants a little bit of chunky peanuts in his peach butter. So we're going to make sure this is all mixed in well. Everything in here is pureed well. We want this to spread. But if we had any chunks in this, it wouldn't thicken up as easy as it will when it's 100% pureed. So let me set that down. I'm going to unplug my blender here. Okay. So now I told you we're going to cook this, and the only reason that we're cooking this is that with my daughter being off, we have some errands to run, and I don't want to have to babysit it. And if I were putting this on the stove in the Dutch oven, I would be tied, literally tied to the stove. And I want to be able to walk away. So that is one reason why I decided to learn about processing water bath canning in the turkey roaster, whereas instead of having to do it on my stove, I'd have to be here and babysit that. I don't have to do that with the turkey roaster. I don't have to babysit my crock pot. I can put it in here and come back in an hour or 2 hours and look and see what kind of consistency we got. Judge from there, because, you know, everything in your crock pot, everything we do from a garden, it really honestly depends on where you live. Literally. It depends. Where you live determines when you harvest. It determines your canning pressure when you're canning. And where you live actually determines your recipe. Some people like a lot of spices in their applesauce, my daughter being one. Some of us don't, like myself. So I can make her jar a little bit different than I make everybody else's. So, but it's a cultural thing. Some of y'all like adding a little bit of ginger to your apple butter, your Zapple butter, and our family doesn't like ginger that much. So I'm not putting any ginger in mine. I am using cinnamon, and I am gonna, now she used ground cloves. I have no earthly idea where you buy ground cloves other than going into Amazon and just finding some ground cloves somewhere. I couldn't even find it on Amazon. So I cannot find my food processor, which is why I'm having to improvise. Otherwise, this would have been in my food processor. So it's downstairs in a box, and I'm so tired of those words. But anyway, I digress. So what we are going to do is add our spices to this. So let me set this on a paper towel. I don't want this sticky all over the place. So let me put this on a paper towel real quick. Okay. And I'm going to grab a spatula. And I want, Laurel, why don't you come over here? And you can just stand over top and everybody can see this. As I'm stirring this up, look how smooth that is. That just, and it absorbed. Look how we put a half a cup of apple juice. And this, y'all, is not runny at all. This is so thick. So I'm thinking it's probably going to take maybe an hour at the most. Maybe, I think it'd be less than an hour before we're going to have that thick, spreadable consistency that apple butter has with our ingredients in here, because this is so thick. I thought, honestly, last night when I got it out that it had way too much juice in it, but I went ahead and kept the juice in there anyway. And now I'm kind of glad I did. So let me grab something to scoop. You know what? Why don't we just add we need to add a cup. So now this calls for 2 cups of white sugar. I am not putting 2 cups of sugar in this little bitty small crock pot. So we're going to adjust our measurements to what our sugar, to what we add. So I think I'm just going to add about a half a cup instead of 2 cups of sugar. Now we'll taste this, and y'all do it to taste. It doesn't have to be what she said or what I wrote down. It doesn't have to be what I'm saying. If you like your apple butter truly really sweet, then you add more sugar, or use the white sugar, and you can do the full 2 cups. But I'm only going to add a half a cup of white sugar, and then I'm going to add a half a cup of brown sugar. And I don't have a scoop in that jar for some reason. This is not my normal brown sugar jar. My brown sugar jar has not arrived. So we're just improvising on this too. So I'm going to put a half a cup into here. And now remember that our brown sugar is made with molasses. And we have to pack that down. So let me get that packed. Oh, and I bought all the stuff, y'all. I'm going to make my own brown sugar. Go over here. Let me show you. Brown sugar is nothing more than molasses and white sugar. And I prefer darker brown sugar, which is why this is really light. So when I make it again, I'm going to make it a little bit darker than what I have right here, because I personally prefer darker sugar. So let me put my scoop back in my raw sugar. We're going to add the brown sugar. And then it says to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/8 or a pinch of cloves. I don't know what a pinch of cloves is when you're looking at these little puppies. I have no earthly idea. So the only thing I'm going to do is add one of these little suckers into my pot, which is really hot because my arm just told me. Okay, so we're going to add one of those little cloves in there. Now, keep in mind, anything you cook in a crock pot, the flavors intensifies with whatever spices or seasonings you add. Like if you're cooking a roast or something, you want to put less onions, or the whole roast is going to be overpowered with onions. Same way with your spices. So even in here, we don't want to add the full amount that she's telling us to add, because it'll overpower the flavor that we're trying to get into a smaller batch. So she put 1 teaspoon. I am going for a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, because again, I don't have as much apples. Y'all, I may have to do a half, because that doesn't look like a whole lot of cinnamon, and we kind of prefer cinnamon, you know. So anyway, like I said, adjust it to taste. It's all about what you like, how you like to cook it. Okay, so we're gonna break our sugar up and get this all blended and stirred in. Wow. Y'all, I can smell the cloves. I can't even begin to describe what my kitchen smells like right now. It smells like... that is really good. I'm just going to throw that out there. That is delicious. It smells like an apple pie. And speaking of, on my next batch of zucchini that I pick, I'm just trying to get everything off the bottom, y'all. So I want to make sure this is very, very well blended, because I'm still seeing a trail of cinnamon in here. So I'm just going to stir this up for a few more minutes, and I'm going to let this get up to a boiling point, and I may cook it on low for a little while, and that'll prolong the time that it takes to thicken up. And I don't think it'll take that long, but on low, it'll take even less, and we could cook it longer, and that'll give me a little bit more time to get other things done. So since we've had it on high, I'm going to keep it on high until it boils. And when it starts to boil, I'm going to turn it down. So let's set this back where she is, and we're going to put the lid on it, and we're going to let it do its thing. Now, our applesauce over here, this is all ready to go. It's already got all the ingredients in it. This has already been pureed. It's been strained. I mean, it's ready to go to be canned. So we're going to get this canned this afternoon, later today. And in the same canner, I'm going to be canning some green beans in my roaster that we're going to water bath can. So we're going to get my beans ready and my applesauce ready to go, and we'll get all of that canned out today. So we'll be doing both. Let me see. What else have we got? We got to cook that for a while, and I think we're pretty much done with our zucchini apples. So stay tuned and be sure to come back. We're going to do the process of canning this afternoon, and I'm going to break open that turkey roaster and make some counter space, find somewhere to put it. I'll probably have to have it on the island, so that'll be interesting. So, but we're going to get that all together, and I'll put that on another video. But be sure to stay tuned for our Zapple Butter, because we're going to be testing this in a little bit. And so y'all come back, and I'll do a short little taste testing and let Laurel take part in that too. So y'all come back to see me, and I hope y'all have a blessed day. Thank you.